Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today, every now and then, we get some really cool folks from the other side of the fence. Some people who aren't necessarily part of the Geelong bubble, but have some really fascinating stories to talk about themselves. And today, I'm joined by Terry DEHGHANI, mad Carlton fan. How are you, mate? Welcome aboard.
Mate, it is a pleasure to be here.
Really keen to have you on. And we were just chatting before the show. You've just recently come back from a little trip. How was that?
It was exactly what I needed it to be. Went away.
Mental break.
Yeah, unplugged, recharged, reconnected with myself and my sister who lives in Dubai, and got to spend some quality time outside of Melbourne and outside of the bubble. And now I'm back and missing it already.
Oh yeah, I suppose considering all the places you travelled off to, I don't blame you in the slightest. It's a pretty awesome part of the world, and whilst there's kind of the love of footy that's here, there's always that temptation to just kind of get away from everything and disconnect. And it sounds like you had an awesome time, and I'm quietly a little bit jealous.
Well, I'm jealous of that footy club of yours and that scarf you've got behind you, seeing as what you've been able to achieve in the time that I've been alive.
Yeah, it's been a good ride. It's been a good even last 12 months more specifically as well. But I guess before we really wade deep into your love of Carlton, and we'll talk about some of your content and the ways in which even our two clubs have kind of collided over the years. Before we get to all of that, I'd love to just kind of dive into when footy came into your life. Like, when did you first discover the game? How did it grab you at first? What were some of those first experiences with AFL footy?
So I started when I was about 4 years old. So
very nice.
I guess footy was my escapism from what was going on. I had a bit of a rough start to life, childhood. Dad left, single mum type situation.
Yep.
So kind of seeing that side of the world and life, that it can get difficult. And so going to the footy was that first real memory of excitement and electricity. And I was hooked right away.
Was it always Carlton straight out the gate?
Yeah.
There was never a moment of contemplation as you were growing up? There was no team that was really kind of dominating in that period that you were... Or was it really... I guess Carlton, would have... Even, I guess there's a window there where Carlton would have been right up and about as well, but was there any contemplation of any team at any stage, or was it the Baggers the whole way?
It was the Baggers the whole way. Went down to Optus Oval, watched the Blues play. I think it was St Kilda. I just have flashbacks of it and just fell in love straight away. So there was no chance for anyone else.
Are there any family influences around you that were swaying you in other directions, or did it kind of help that you had a whole bunch of Carlton supporters around you?
Well, Mum was a Carlton supporter.
Oh, well, there you go.
So my grandfather was a mad Essendon supporter. I lived with my grandparents for a while, so it could have been Essendon, I guess, but Mum was pretty staunch on being a Blue, so she did her thing.
No, that's fair. How did those family Carlton v Essendon games go over the years you were growing up? Obviously, there's the well-entrenched rivalry between the two teams. How did it go family-wise on those occasions?
A lot of banter, a lot of good banter, Easters and Christmases and all of that. But my grandfather, he's a really happy guy. As long as I'm happy, he's happy. So he didn't get into me too much. He just loved James Hird, and I just couldn't stand James Hird.
I mean, easy to see why, again, with the two teams being what they are, and Hurdy, and I mean some of his brilliance at various different stages. But obviously, Carlton were pretty stacked with some pretty brilliant players themselves. So I'm sure he had players on your side of the fence that he wasn't necessarily too keen on for similar reasons.
Of course, we're the Carlton Football Club. We love to be hated by the outside,
Oh, look, I think there's the core 3 or 4 teams around you that there might be, but I think there's plenty of others that I probably wouldn't share that same sentiment, I'm guessing. I must say, like, I was born into mostly Geelong family, but Mum was a Carlton supporter. I was always going to be Geelong. My granddad played for them, and so there was kind of this... And Dad was really footy focused, whereas Mum, not so much. She was very casual, sort of, tune in a little bit more when Carlton are on top and maybe go missing when they weren't. But... So as a result, it was Geelong straight away, but there was always that Carlton influence in the household, and so they would always kind of be my second team, I guess, when I was growing up, as much as you can ever really have a second team. I'm not one to subscribe too much to that sort of logic, but Yeah, I'd always keep half an eye on what they're doing, and if Geelong wasn't going to win on a given week, or if we were playing against Carlton and we happened to lose, not ideal, but there could be worse teams to lose to. Was kind of my approach back in the day, and well, I hope there's more people with a similar sort of mindset.
I love the soft spot you got for the Blues, mate. It's good to see. I know
And,
it's there
and
somewhere.
it kind of extends to. I mean, considering it's been a rough couple decades for the Blues for the most part, and hopefully things are on the way up now. But it's kind of led to that softer spot as well, and kind of, I mean, maybe having that softer spot has kind of helped. I don't know if sympathy is the right sort of word in some respects. It's been a challenging block of years, and I'm just really hoping they can find a way to crack through sometime soon.
Yeah, mate. It's not sympathy, it's pity, and I can see it.
Let's frame it better and go with sympathy. It doesn't sound as bad.
You're being polite. I respect it.
So, when did I guess what were your footy playing experience like? Did you get out there as well when you were growing up?
So I loved the footy straight away, but I played basketball for the majority of my childhood. So mum, really protective. She said footy was too rough, so I wasn't allowed to play. So I played basketball instead, and in hindsight, it was the best thing for me. I loved it, loved the game. When I got to the age of about, I think it was 19 when I really started going out, and I'd played basketball for so long. I always was going to play footy. So I played a year of under 19s, and then I went back and played when I was 24 and 25 for the Thomastown Footy Club. And I always knew that no matter what, I would end up playing footy at some point. So my career lasted 3 seasons and got one flag to in my first season of footy after juniors, I guess. Won the flag with Thomastown, and so that's about as far as my playing goes. And did a little bit of coaching while I was living in Israel, a bit of that as well. But I've always just been an admirer of the game. I think it's the best game in the world.
I wholeheartedly agree, but it is awesome that you're a bit like some of those AFL players that kind of bob up and manage to snag a premiership and then I don't know, lost to the game or disappear or whatever. They kind of had their moment in the spotlight. You've managed to pop through, not play all that much, grab a flag and ride off into the distance and enjoy it. That's pretty cool.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
You just got to pick the right time. Okay, you look around Thomastown, they're tracking pretty well. All right, I reckon it's about time. They could be flag favourites here. Let's jump on the bandwagon, see if we can steal a flag, and then not worry about it again.
Right off into the sunset.
Yeah, no, you've managed that very, very well. So obviously you're talking about some of that international travel. You just mentioned Israel there, and so you're talking about a bit of coaching and those sort of things. So what was that like as you? I guess how old were you when you first started doing that, and what does that look like? What's the scene like over there?
I moved there in 2017 when was it? It was mid-year, like June, July.
Yep.
And the first thing I did, I had spent 6 months prior to that in China teaching English and did some work with the AFL on the China project and just sort of helped out and ran along with the teams. And through that, I realized that there were these, I guess, what do you call them? Like just international teams, basically expats, Aussies, kicking the footy around, and they, created their own little local competitions. And so I saw that in Shanghai, trained with them a few times. And then when I went to Israel, the first thing I did was, go to the Facebook group, Aussies in Israel. And I'm like, does anybody have a footy? Let's go for a kick. And so that kind of started a series of events where, 3 people became 5, became 7, became 11. And then before you know it,
you got a squad.
Got a squad. And I guess being the token Aussie, I was thrust into this kind of coaching role. I was, 27? Yeah, 26, 27. And
yeah, right.
So coached the team, and we entered and went to the AFL Euro Cup in 2018. And it was not something I planned to do. I just wanted to kick the footy around, especially when you live outside of Australia. You need a little something just to keep you
reconnect you.
Correct. And that was my outlet to have my little slice of home, and that was the story. Yeah.
No, that's really, really cool. And I mean, my dad's been doing a lot of international travel over the last decade. Really, I haven't seen him a hell of a lot over that time, but I hear similar sort of stories where when he was in China, he'd tee up with a local group that were playing cricket, and he'd get out there, and it was a great opportunity for him. He was playing kind of seconds level state cricket for years when I was really, really young, and just prior even to that. And so it was awesome for him to just get out there and look, the competition's not fierce, and he hadn't probably hadn't gone for a fast single in about 20 years, but he thoroughly enjoyed that and just trying to crack it over the fence whenever he could. Probably made a mockery of the competition, I'd imagine, with some of those old skills that were coming back to the fore. But it's really, really awesome kind of seeing those sorts of competitions, whether it's cricket, whether it's AFL, even rugby league and those sorts of things, like those kind of entrenched sports pop up in regions you wouldn't necessarily expect it.
Exactly right. I mean, look, sport at its core, it really binds people.
Absolutely.
Footy's no different, and I think I have a different appreciation for the game, knowing how it helped me sort of last in where I was living. It's difficult to set up a life in another country, particularly in the Middle East, and particularly in a country like Israel, where I don't have any family there. I don't have any connection there. I was there because my ex-girlfriend got a job there, and we sort of said, yalla, let's go. Let's see what this adventure has for us. So yeah, it provided me with a lot of comfort and allowed me to keep my head straight.
Now, I'm kind of bouncing backwards a little bit to kind of the younger days, but obviously you did get to see a little bit of Carlton success early days. Things like 95 stick out. What are your memories of that? Or
Well, I was born in 91, so 95, I don't really remember it. I mean, I know that it happened.
Much the same as me then, considering I was 6, so...
Yeah, so it's tricky. And then obviously 99, we make the prelim. We make the grand final. We beat the Bombers in the prelim. I was 8. Again, I don't really remember it. My real passionate supporting days where my memory is there probably comes when I'm about 14 or 15. And by that point, we're well and truly entrenched in rebuild number 1.
Yeah, how many rebuilds do you define it as now? There's 1.0. Is it like the lockdowns at this point?
I would say right now this is rebuild number 2. Number 1 was the Murphy Gibbs Cruiser era, and then number 2 is the Wiedering Kerno Mackay era.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can get around that. That seems like a pretty good model to me, and it feels like, again, outside observer, but it feels like this 2.0 rebuild could be onto something. But again, we'll get to all of that shortly. So another key aspect, you obviously talking about the international travel. I mean, one of the main reasons you're here on the show today is because of your Blue Abroad content that you've been working on for many years, and that began while you're over in China. Do I have that right?
Yeah. I mean,
so how did that idea come about? Because I mean, like, it's YouTube content, but we know that in a host of different ways, China can be quite particular about it. Interactions with the internet and how we put content out there, those sort of things. What sort of obstacles did you face while you were trying to build that up at the same time?
Yeah, so initially it started as a way for me to just stay in touch with Carlton. I realized while I moved away that, it's not just a hobby. Like, I genuinely can't miss a moment of the live action or any of the news. And I started, at that point I was listening to podcasts. I was working as a lawyer prior to that. I'd sort of run away from that and didn't want to do that anymore because the internet had really taken over. So I was doing a lot of reading of blogs and podcasts, and I guess I just wanted to document my thoughts about what was going on with the Blues. So, first half of 2017, I started writing a blog on Medium, which wasn't blocked by the Chinese side of the internet. So I was able to access sort of this side of the internet. So it started there, really. And then once I moved to Israel, that's when the audio podcast began, because at that point I was pretty inspired by Gary Vee and Arsenal Fan TV, and this whole concept of people creating content about what they love and building a life out of it. It's like, wow, okay, why not me? Why not Carlton?
And I must say, like, looking around as Ben was kind of getting into the space with the Hoop Show, and then when I came aboard, like, I would consume a bit of footy content, but quite a lot. Like, I was watching the game every single week, and a lot of the shows and radio shows around that. But the podcast scene, the YouTube content scene, is really something that it took a bit longer to get going here than what we've seen. As you mentioned, things like Arsenal TV, and there's heaps of other examples based upon whether it's soccer or basketball or a lot of other big international codes. I feel like Aussie rules took a little while to get going in terms of. I mean, there was lots of small things, but actually some figures starting to build up amongst that space. And I must say, really personally, I credit you quite a lot as being someone who's kind of informed my approach into this space and showing that there's a space for this as well. And I know Ben has expressed the same sentiment. I don't want to try and blow too much smoke while we're doing this, but I mean, you've done some really incredible things in this space, and obviously there's it's a smaller sphere that we're trying to work in when it comes to the sport that we're discussing and that we love and we produce content around. But I mean, look, I've kind of meandered a little bit here, but I must say, like, congratulations on all that you've done, and how, like, as you've continued to build things up, have you identified? I mean, you're continuing to identify little pockets you can continue growing, right? Where do you see this next adventure within this space being? Because you've hit podcasts, you've got your video side. What are the potential options for you?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you so much for the kind word. That's really, it's really humbling. I think for me, what I learned about Australia when I left Australia was how conservative Australia was. And generally, I was working in sports tech in Israel, and we were dealing with clubs around the world who were already talking about fan engagement and fan content and how they can grasp their fan base more and connect with them more digitally. And obviously, we just mentioned the fan channels in Europe with the Premier League and the like. And I always felt and I understood that things generally come to Australia a little later than everywhere else. And that at that point, yeah, you're right, there weren't any fan channels per se. I mean, Caden McDonald was, a
couple examples, yeah.
Yeah, but he's more so Caden McDonald as opposed to a Melbourne Football Club fan channel.
Yeah.
So there were a few figures there, and yeah, I guess, you have the light bulb moment. At that point, I'm still searching within myself, very much about what do I really want to do and what do I really love and what can I really build for myself around what I love. And the notion of you can just build a podcast talking about what you love. And I was like, do I love something that much? And then that is really where it all starts. And then, I went to an Arsenal game. I met Robbie, and they had me on Arsenal Fan TV and one of the fan cams. And from that moment, I realized, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to do.
I can do something with this
myself. Yeah. So, but having said that, ultimately you realize you've got to be in Melbourne at some point for it. So that's why I'm here. Build a bit of a foundation. And I guess to answer the second part of your question, what's next? Yeah. So now I feel like there's a bit of a blueprint that's being created for Blue Abroad. And I guess it's about, executing on that every year. I'm not going to be in Australia for the rest of my life, that's for sure. So until I leave, I want to build a strong, network foundation. I think those are important. Build some real connections, and then, ultimately, a YouTube channel can be done from anywhere in the world. You just need your equipment, and internet connection, and so that's the dream, really.
No, and doing an incredible job of that, and as I said, like, been really, really informative to her. I know the both of us, and I'm sure I'm speaking for many others as well. And I think it really shows, like, it's obviously there's biases in those sorts of things. Everyone's got their team and that sort of thing, but good content is good content. And if you can sit there and or whatever your platform happens to be, and do that, produce that good content, have a really engaging conversation, engage with the person on the other side of the screen or the speakers on their phone or whatever the case happens to be, then you're halfway there. So what have been some of those challenges that you faced as you've tried to build that platform so far?
Well, I mean, at the start, you've got to be able to sit through. I sat through 15 months of 11 views, 18 views, 33 views, and I think a lot of people. My observation is when I get into the game, they look too much at the views and at the likes and that sort of thing. And look, it is one of the important metrics, but ultimately, my reason for doing it is really what helped me overcome that. I wanted a documentation of when this team wins its next flag. So having that behind me allowed me to really overcome that obstacle of getting that traction initially, because I was aware that it would take a bit for Aussie footy fans to get used to, because we're so ingrained in the way it was. Newspaper,
it's the
radio.
Footy show, it's Triple M, it's listening on the radio, it was very one or two dimensional for the most part.
Exactly. So those
Fox
are challenges.
Footy, I should add in there too.
Correct. Yeah. And then as you grow, we brought on more people. My design and in my mind is to have a platform where you can have other content creators create on the platform. So with that comes more personalities. You've got to be able to manage people. You've got to be able to communicate to different types of people. So I think that's now the biggest challenge. It's become a little bit more of a people management game
Yeah.
as opposed to just focusing on me sitting down behind a camera and a microphone and talking.
But at the same time, I think that says a lot about what you've built so far, that it's at a point where you can be more of a facilitator than the sole focus on the content production side than what you once were. So what's it been like as you've been able to hand the reins over a little bit, for want of a better phrase?
I mean, it's been a journey into my own personality, and you learn a lot about yourself. I'm definitely someone that has like trust issues, right? So being able to hand over and let go is a big thing for me. Now, how do you do that? Well,
Relate.
you build those relationships. I've got Pommy, I've got Paolo, I've got Joe, and I've got some younger people coming through as well who I trust to run something while I'm not there, which is really cool and not something I was probably capable of doing when I started out. But now that I'm here, it's just one of those next layers for me.
So what about, I guess, because we've spoken, top level about the content itself. Obviously, there's a heavy focus on the Carlton Footy Club, and obviously you were talking about how you're looking to chronicle that road to the 2023 premiership.
Yes, sir.
Who knows? Hopefully. Well, I can't say hopefully because my mob will be right up there with you. But if not us, then you guys, as I discussed before. What's it been like in terms of collaboration with the club? Has the Carlton Footy Club been forthcoming somewhat, been able to assist? Has there been any sort of interactions, good, bad, otherwise, that have been able to help grow or expand your reach a little bit?
I've had a few. Look, I've got a relationship with the club. I think ultimately the club is a microcosm of the league, which is a microcosm of society here in Australia, in that there's a little bit of conservatism and it's an innovative solution. It's a new thing. So naturally there's a bit of hesitancy. I still think we're in that hesitancy stage of our relationship.
Is it controlling the message a little bit in some respects?
I don't know. I'd be guessing because I'm not on the inside. Now, having said that, Brian Cook's come on, Luke Sayers has come on. I've had players come on. The media team have given me some opportunities as well. Ultimately, I do understand you've got to protect the club at all costs. So, you got to. I guess I've got to make sure that the actual product, the channel, everything is done in a professional way, and you earn that trust. So nothing.
Yep.
I don't want anything to be given. I want it to be earned. So naturally, you can't have everything. You can't have all access because you've got to. The club is it's sacrosanct. So yeah, but we're working on it.
No, I can totally respect that, especially that kind of that key sentiment there of the being earned as opposed to given. I think for anyone who's kind of tried to do anything in their life, the satisfaction usually comes from the hard work that you've had to put in to get there. And I guess I feel like I do this every episode, so sorry viewers, listeners, because I keep going back to my teaching background and the fact that I teach year 12s and it's the same sort of sentiment every year. Like, this thing is not going to be delivered to you on a silver platter. You have to be willing to bust your ass. You have to put in those hard yards. You have to sacrifice things, and it's the same for the players that try and get into the comp too. Like, there are sacrifices that get made. There are times where things get really challenging. You just got to push through. It's not, things aren't always going to work your way, but you need to find a way through. And I think you've echoed that really, really well there, and it's certainly an approach that I'm trying to bring to this side of things as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't come from anything where I was entitled. That's just the story of my life. So I think having those humble beginnings have allowed me to just stay the course of what's important. And it's a battle. It's become a real journey of personal development. I watch videos that I was doing in 2019, and I'm like, oh my god, like, it's just.
But everyone's been there, right?
If you're not feeling that, then you're not growing and evolving. So I'm just trying to utilize the platform and utilize my experience with it to do good and leave the community in a better place than when I entered the community.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously touching on kind of your background there and the challenges that's obviously imposed upon you, but then that's what's helped encourage you to kind of push on. I guess, cycling back to that teaching thing, it really, like, one of the first schools, I won't name the place, so I don't want to do the wrong thing by anyone here, but one of the first schools that I worked at, I was dealing with students, like the demographic there, most of them, and again, it was year 11s and 12s, a lot of them were all talking about how, like, I'm the first one in my family that's ever gone this far. And, like, I'll admit, I come from a pretty well-off sort of background. Like, my parents have always been there. They've been fairly well cashed up. I never really had any challenges as I was growing up. I was able to not worry about, a working life, to just focus on school, all those sorts of things. That really only comes from a place of privilege at the end of the day. But that experience, getting to work with 17, 18-year-olds and younger as well, but when you're getting that pointy end, a lot of these things start to bubble to the surface a little bit more, just because they're a bit older and the relationships there and that sort of thing. And I started hearing these sorts of stories that, for not all, but a large number, a majority, had never actually gotten to the end. And okay, well, so why is this different from you? Why are we here? And again, it's that same thing. Like, you hear kind of cliche things like breaking cycles and all those sort of things, but a lot of it's like, I want to be more than what I was brought up in. I want to be this, I want to do that, and I know that it's going to take work. And sometimes it's, regardless of, I guess, of people's kind of walk of life, it's understanding, like, if you're willing to work, if you're willing to put in the hard yards, it's not guaranteed, but there's always some degree of reward that comes from that.
Totally. Will you give yourself the best chance?
Exactly. And in this space, 100% as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So, the work is important. There's also the understanding of, is this for me? You only know by doing. So, I think this experience for me has taught me about what I'm good at, what I'm not good at as well. And everything's just exposed, and it's beautiful. The truth is it's there.
Yeah, 100%. So what do you think it's going to take, considering everything we've just discussed about kind of the, I don't know, it's like the walled garden, a little bit of kind of AFL media, club media, those sorts of things. If you were to speculate, and we are purely speculating here, what do you think it's going to take to crack things open a little bit more, to see that sort of level, that open level of communication and dialogue and opportunity for the non-traditional media background people, such as ourselves, for example, to get that equivalent, small scale again because of the small scale of our sport, but that equivalent sort of platform that we see for Arsenal TV or an NBA team podcast or YouTube channel or whatever?
Well, I think firstly time, but also I don't know if it'll ever be a fully integrated collaborative solution, and maybe it doesn't need to be. Maybe I think we have this idea, or people might have this idea that you build the channel and then you might get a job at the club and you kind of go down that route. Well, I don't know, like podcasts and YouTube channels and what people can do, like you realize, like you can you create an independent entity, which I don't have someone telling me what I can and can't say. I can really be as toxic as I could possibly be.
You're not being toxic, let's be clear, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, like I don't have someone telling me what I can and can't say. I like that. I think I have a bit of an entrepreneurial mentality around that space. But that doesn't mean I just go rogue. It just means you use that power wisely. And I don't know, I enjoy the independence. I enjoy not having to worry about what I'm saying. Like I hold myself accountable for what I say. I think at some point time, with the effort, 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years of doing the channel, maybe that trust will be earned, and maybe those opportunities will start opening up a little bit more than what they are right now. But if not, well, still love the club, still love what I do.
Nothing changes in that sense,
and
right?
Nothing changes. So it's kind of like, I think at the start of the journey, I used to think about it a little bit too much, and then now it's just gotten to a point where I'm like, well, it's what's in my control. All I can really control is putting a good product out there, making sure we're bringing people together.
And do I love doing what I'm doing?
Exactly. So that's really where the focus has shifted.
Because I think, and this applies to so many different walks of life, but if you're not loving what it is you're doing, if you're not enjoying what it is you're doing, then you're probably not in the right place. And I think that 100% applies for any form of content creation, not just footy based stuff, but anything out there. I mean, anyone in the back. I mean, hell, if anyone's watching this for the first time, you can spot in my background, there's a heap of video game related paraphernalia, like because that was actually where my core thing was before producing before producing any footy content whatsoever. It was video games and that sort of thing. And what did I get in there? It's because I loved it. And I wanted to. I had thoughts. I wanted to put it out there. I found a platform. I worked with people. We're not, making millions of dollars or anything like that. But I'm there because I love it. And it's the same with this. And if it becomes something incredible at the same time, and you end up rolling it, well, beautiful, great, awesome. But what are we here for? It's because we love Geelong or Carlton, or we love the game, and we want to share our thoughts, and we love the people who tune in and share their experiences with us as well.
Mate, it's incredible. I mean, I could never really think about what has happened today back then when I started and what it would become. The whole community aspect. I think giving young people opportunities to write or create content and sort of start building a portfolio for their potential careers. That's the part that I really did not envisage. And again, that responsibility piece comes back. But yeah, man, I mean, I love it. I love doing it. I love everything about it. And the moment that I don't love it is the moment it's time for me to step away and let the next wave come through.
But the beautiful thing is that should that moment ever arrive for you, and I hope it doesn't, because again, you produce some incredible stuff and it's really, really fascinating to tune into. But should that moment emerge, the beautiful thing that you've done is that you've created already internally, or helped foster this next wave, as you just said, that's already there and ready to step up and is doing an incredible job in their own right. And that's again a real credit to you and the platform that you've built so far.
No, I appreciate it, man. And yeah, that's I believe, and this is just my theory. I think time will prove it wrong or right. I don't know if it's sustainable for it to be just me the whole time. I think if it's going to live beyond me, there needs to be it needs to be a platform. And I guess I've just chosen that route. But I mean, listen, there's some great YouTubers out there where it's just them. Swoop Luke for Collingwood. The pair for Port Adelaide, Saints TV. Probably is a little bit more kind of like what I'm trying to do as well. Jake does an incredible job.
We had Jake on the show last year. Awesome. We had Swoop on as well. Fantastic. Both of them doing awesome stuff. We had Caden on. You cited him before, obviously. There's some incredible people doing work in this space, and as you say, it's a platform that's being built.
Absolutely, yeah, and everyone does it in a different way. But at the end of the day, the concept of talking about your favorite sports team on camera or not on camera is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, 100%. So we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about you and your journey and your pathway and those sort of things. Let's wander into the Carlton space a little bit, and we'll try and cross it over with some Geelong aspects where we can as well. So what have been some of the great memories of yours of the game so far? Obviously, you mentioned 95. You were very, very young for that. 99, similar deal, really. But what have been some of those memories as you've grown up? I know the bulk of it, as we kind of cited before, has been kind of cellar dwelling and rebuilds and those sorts of things. But there's some highs along the way.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, 2011 beating the Bombers in the elimination final was amazing because it was the rise of that crop. I think round 3, 2012 Friday night, beating the Pies by 10 goals, being premiership favourites. That was a highlight until Andrew Carazzo's collarbone was broken the week after, and really our whole season was over there.
Crumbled a bit. Yeah.
Ultimately, that rebuild was over. And then, obviously 2013 playing Richmond, finishing 9th, of course, not supposed to be there. We beat them. That was a pretty cool experience. And then, 2022 really is the next wave of good memory and good experience at the football. So, yeah.
So how do you reflect on 2022 itself? I mean, obviously we know how it ended, and I'm not trying to poke the bear when it comes to that sort of thing, but obviously we saw a lot of growth from the club. On field, yes, the ending was unfortunate, but I think as an outside observer, there was such incredible growth within the team, and I mean, I feel like, as I've already highlighted a few times, I feel like that's really primed to grow even further next year. But how do you reflect on the year as a Carlton supporter?
So difficult, Paul. It really is, because it was a step in the right direction. Clearly, we got the right coach in, we put the right pieces in, we got some really good additions in Chera and Hewitt, and we started playing this brand of football that was stacking up. At the end of round 10, we beat Sydney. We're 8-2, and it's like, it was a shock to me. It was a shock to most of us. We were hoping to be sort of at like a 50-50 record.
Yeah, break even, yeah.
Yeah, and there was this understanding, or maybe there was this expectation, that we would naturally just get better as the season went on because we'd get more comfortable with the new game plan and the new coach and the like. And then, injuries started showing that the depth was being tested, and then you get to round 23, you miss Walsh, Hewitt, and Kennedy, who are really, they're really crucial to getting first use of the football, and it ends the way it ends. Hopefully, we look back one day and say it was meant to be this way, and we were meant to learn the lesson. And that's probably what needed to happen, because there's still a little bit of, immaturity
Yeah, for sure.
amongst the group. Naturally, we just haven't been there. That it was the first time that they really put themselves in a position where it was like, you're right there.
I mean, it
In
was a finals
contention.
game at the end of the day, really. It was a
Yeah,
knockout, so,
exactly.
well,
So
one way knockout, I guess, but yeah.
yeah, so it
There
was
were
tough.
stakes for both teams, so.
Yeah, correct. So it was tough to finish the way we did, considering we were 12 wins and 4 games remaining. But that's life. Doesn't always go your way.
Yeah, but as you say, I mean, there's some young, immature names and bodies in there, and I'm sure for everyone involved, because it really did have that, as I just mentioned, it had that finals quality about it. The stakes were unbelievably high, as it was the game before against Melbourne, where they also acquitted themselves incredibly well. I'm sure there's so much that the boys will have inevitably learned from that. Even Vossi and the coaching staff, when it comes to game plan, how does it translate to this sort of scenario when you're running against it? I mean, we kind of, I think everyone was looking at it going, Collingwood of 2022, we know what's coming, and sure enough, it came in the final quarter. But I'm sure there's a ton that they would have learned from that as well.
Totally. Well, I just had a brainwave. I'm thinking of Geelong, and I remember obviously the Nick Davis fourth quarter. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing it up is
That's a
because
name that I don't ever speak.
yeah, well, it had a bit of heartbreak about it. I guess, from the outside looking in, you can clear this up for me. Was that ultimately necessary to spur the group to go that next level? Do you look back on that now that it's all said and done and say, okay, that was actually needed for the group to be great?
I think it's a part of it.
Okay.
I think it's that coupled with then 2006 was I think it broke them a little bit
Okay.
initially, and 2006 was the downer that then came afterwards, because we end up missing the finals that following year. And I think and it's obviously me purely speculating, and there'll be tons of books out there'll be tons of interviews that'll clear up a lot of these sort of things from certain people's perspectives. From mine, I look at it and I go, those two things combined, and the fact that at the end of 2006 they nearly lost Bomber Thompson as a result, and it was crystal clear that the players loved him, and the decision was coming, so because the performance is not matching all of these other metrics that we've accumulated, so maybe we need to change things. The players fought, they got what they wanted, and I think when you add that final piece to the puzzle of so those negative experiences with this, okay, we've fought for this thing, we've got what we wanted, we've shown, like, the club has put faith in us, now we need to show them why that faith was well placed, created this culture that with a couple, I mean, I think we were 2-3 going into that Richmond game in 2007 where we blew them away by 160 points or whatever it was. But it was that, and then finally Chappie coming out in the media and saying things exactly as it is. You just is a series of lots of different events, and I mean, I hope not that it's a great way for things to have played out, but I hope that in the case of Carlton, that outcome is one of those pieces in the puzzle that galvanizes the club and that group, and even again for those young guys, gives them what they need to spur them on to even greater things.
Mate, it better be. I hope it is. It's the
Rebuild
only
2.0 will be the successful one.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, we've even gone about the rebuild in a different way with the way we've drafted. I mean, the first one was, we drafted midfielders first, whereas this one we went with the key position players.
Yeah, the spine
first.
is amazing.
So, yeah.
So as we continue this kind of current day trend, but also reflecting a little bit on the past, clashes with Geelong over the years, what have been some of your memories? I guess there's some recent ones, obviously, but are there any that stick out from the journey so far, good, bad, or otherwise?
Mate, it's been honestly, Geelong's one of those clubs that I have had. You suppress your losses as the years go on. It's just constantly been
Bury
a
'em
Geelong
away.
fixture. Yeah, and I think 2014 we came close a few times. Bryce Gibbs had some good games from memory, but just not good enough. And really, like, you beat us all the way through my whole life. I think we beat you in 2010 on a Monday afternoon.
Oh, geez,
apart from
maybe I repressed that one. I don't remember playing Carlton on a Monday.
yes,
No, of course
Eddie
it was
Betts
Eddie.
and Jeff Garlett did some good things, and then obviously we did the job in 2020. And again, I'm talking about a decade apart. These are the
Yeah.
ones that really stick out to me. But yeah, Geelong's always been just that team. There's been quite a few of those teams, but Geelong's probably right at the top of teams that we just haven't come close to. Hawthorn were there as well. But I had a good mate growing up who went for Geelong, and it's always respect. It's ultimately respect. Also because of the way the club conducts itself, there's always been that real big layer of respect for Geelong.
Well, I mean, obviously one of the figures, and you mentioned him before, one of the big figures at Geelong through that whole kind of reinvigoration of the club and building it into what ultimately eventually led to this 2022 premiership was Brian Cook.
Mm.
He was such an incredible figure in terms of establishing that, coupled with a few other key people, obviously Frank Costa and Mark Thompson and Tom Harley and a lot of key figures along the way. But I, as an outside observer, knowing what Cookie had done for us, I can't help but feel like he is already having a massive influence over that culture that's being built, turning the club into not just a club that will hopefully be successful on field, but also one that acquits itself in the right ways off the field as well, that creates, is the proper support mechanism for all the players, all the coaches, all the fans, and becomes this figure that I think most people kind of put Geelong and Sydney up on this kind of top tier in terms of not just the on-field but the off-field. And it seems like Cookie, just from the little things that I've seen, is starting to kind of recreate that magic that he created over in Geelong. Seems like he's trying to do that now at Carlton as well.
One of the best things he said when he first got the role at Carlton was that we had too many subcommittees, and one of the first initiatives for him was that he would reduce the subcommittees down from 16 to 8. And it just went to show what a guy who has done it at not only Geelong but obviously at West Coast as well, and one of the best CEOs the country's had, not only in this game but maybe in history. So to see his mind start implementing things at the Carlton Football Club, which I'll be honest, it's a fascinating club. It's full of personality and character and ego, and a lot of people have an opinion and a lot of people want to get involved, and I can imagine there's a lot on internally. People were trying to step on each other's toes. So to come in and have a guy that just sets the record straight, speaks truth, says it how it is. Ultimately, he is a big figure, Brian Cook, and there's a reality with Carlton. If you're going to be successful at the club, it does need big personalities and big figures and strong figures. And yeah, Cookie's been awesome.
And I mean, the guy's credits speak for themselves as well. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it's one of those ones that when he speaks, you listen a little bit more. Not in some sort of dictatorial sort of role, but he speaks from experience. He speaks from having seen what works and can share that experience, and it's continued to work even after, even in the period that he's been gone, which shows that further shows that what he created was, or had a hand in creating, was the right path, because you can then release those reins and still pick it. I guess it goes back to the conversation we're having before, even about your platform and what you're building there, that you can let go, and there's this next group that's able to do it, and he's trying to build an equivalent sort of thing at Carlton. It's really fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really about what we value as a footy club, and the culture clearly needed a change, needed improvement, and we've only had 12 months of it going in the right direction. So I don't want to get too excited, but yeah, it's good to be talking about them not as a basket case of a club and a circus and sacking another coach and whatnot.
Well, you just said not get too excited, but we're going to cast an eye forward to 2023 now, so maybe there's a cue to get excited. Well, I'm curious to see where your thoughts are here. Where do you see things going for the Blues in 2023? Will we be making finals, top 4? What's going to look like, do you think?
Surely. I don't know how much longer I've got to wait with this group. Seriously, 0.6 of a percentage point out of finals. Surely this is the year that they do it. I personally believe the list is there. The spots, there's no major hole. I think the biggest hole that we have right now is a collective experience in big games. So that just requires time and repetition in those pressure moments, so that the boys can learn what they need to do and let the subconscious kick in. I think I don't think it's unreasonable to expect a home final next year and to win a final. So finish in that top six. I think it'll be something like a sixth or a fifth position if I had to predict.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's hope. Because there's a few other clubs as well that even didn't make the finals that look to be on the real improve.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from your likes of Port Adelaide, for example, that fell out, that really kind of got it together, but just too late in their case. You've got teams like the Suns that are on the rise, and you just never know. That was a nice play on words there, so I'll give myself a self-five for that.
Very good.
But like, there is a host of teams in that kind of bottom half that could really put it all together. Let alone the strength that is still there. Like there's no one that you necessarily look at and go, they're clearly going to slide. So I mean, it's a good state for the competition to be in, but it does create the challenge for everyone. Really, you can't ever afford to get complacent. You can't expect that, okay, we're going to have some natural development, and that natural development is just going to guarantee us a spot in the finals or whatever. So it's a really intriguing spot for everyone.
Totally. I mean, look, I would expect them to have the mentality of we can win it, but I'm just trying to be a little diplomatic and safe, But ultimately, I want them to arrive at the season with a full belief that they can get the job done and go all the way. Because I think if you limit yourself at the start of the season to, let's just make a final, then anything short of that is no finals. So,
Yeah,
reach for the flag and settle for fifth and win a final.
Is one of the things, and this is just an outside observation, is one of the key pillars maybe the medical side? I feel like we still hear about injuries to key players often at Carlton.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's a topic of contention amongst the fan base, and there's a division amongst the fan base, and people feel strongly either way. We bring in Andrew Russell from Hawthorn, and he's touted as a really big figure in the space. I don't know yet. I don't feel yet that we are better than every other team and have an advantage over every other team in this space yet. I mean, I'm obviously uninformed because I'm not at the club, but you're right. Injuries have plagued us for a while. We've had some injuries to key players at the top in, Charlie Curnow. I mean, Sam Doherty, we know the situation.
That's obviously a very different one, but yeah.
Yeah. So we've been a little unlucky because we haven't really been able to deal with missing players at the top level in our group. And then 2022, it just seemed like once we got halfway through the season, we were doing a pretty good job of replacing injured players, and that whole next man up mantra was really starting to happen. And then it just got to a point where was too many. And, who do you blame? Is it the players? Is it their preparation? Is it the program? I don't know. Is it luck? What is it? Who knows?
And is it a combination of all? Like it could be one of those simple things where the depth's not quite there, the medical thing's not quite where it needs to be, or eventually, like you're kind of holding up a damn wall, and eventually it has to burst.
Exactly. And yeah, so let's just hope for good health. I think if we're healthy, we're a really strong list.
Yeah. And as everyone said for years, a competitive Carlton is always good for the competition. So I must say I'm looking forward to things, if for no other reason, through that lens as well, because it really does amp up the atmosphere. And we saw it in the first half of the season, as we've discussed a few times. So it's going to be pretty exciting if they can kind of get it all together next year. For the Geelong supporters watching and listening here, we'll kind of delve into some more Geelong specific stuff in a sec. But who should Geelong supporters be watching pretty closely? Who's maybe a Carlton player that we've not perhaps given enough credit to? I don't mean we just as Geelong supporters, but maybe the competition. Is there anyone out there specifically that we should be keeping a close eye on for next year?
It's a really
and I won't say Tom De Koning. I'm not trying to be a smartass and try and say that we're going to take him or anything like that. I know that's the usual joke at the moment. I'm not trying to go there. Who should we, who's that up and comer that maybe people haven't quite gotten onto yet in your eyes?
Well, I'm a little biased. I'm going to give you two players, two young ones. Corey Durden is one, and I'm biased towards Corey because I sponsor him, and I just think the work rate and the way he applies himself is just unbelievable for his age, and just the mind that he has at the age that he is great. And then I think Jesse Motlop is really going to put himself. I mean, I don't want to put too much pressure on him because he's now a second-year player going into his second season, but the way he handled himself in his first year and got better as with each game, and the way he handled himself in pressure situations, I think the future's really bright with him and Corey Durden.
No, there's some awesome choices. And if you were to look onto the Geelong side of the fence, and I know like a lot of people get lost, premiership, that sort of thing, but is there a young bloke there that if you could just try and if you were able to just pinch him out of there, and not Sam DeConing for the same reason, is there anyone there that you kind of had a bit of a peek at? You think, oh, like there's something about them,
Mate, Tanner Bruin. I can't believe you have Tanner Bruin. I rate him very highly, and the fact that you've won a flag and you've added Tanner Bruin is just, it's incredible. It's a credit to Geelong and the way you've operated. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the way he goes about it.
I'm a big fan of how excited he is all the time. Just
Yes.
the straight face, giving nothing away. But that's never going to cease to entertain me, I think. But who's been the greatest Blue of all time in your eyes as we start to wind things down a bit?
I have to pay respect to the past on this one. So I think
Absolutely.
John Nichols would probably be there. Maybe Stephen Kernahan, those types. Alex Jezelenko. Yeah, I think John Nichols is the one.
And of the current crop, who do you look at and go? I mean, is it Cripper? Is he having recently won a Brownlow? Is there? I mean, have you already gone? I think Sam Walsh is going to pip him. You know, where are you thinking in terms of who's that tentpole marquee? We need to build him around the club's future around this guy. Which is, I mean, in itself can be a bad way to look at it as well, because
Of course.
no single individual wins a team a premiership. But
Totally. No, I mean, obviously, I mean, love Cripper, and hopefully when we win the flag and he's there, it's going to be a very special journey for him and the way he stuck fat. But I'm a big fan of Jacob Wiedering and the way he just conducts himself, and I think we've lacked a player like him just with his demeanor and his professionalism. And the big stars of the past at Carlton have all had big extroverted personalities. Fev, we love Fev, but ultimately it didn't end the way it should have ended. It's always been about the real big talented players, but Wiedering is just, I love the way he goes about it. He actually
incredibly talented, but quiet achiever.
Yeah, and I think the humility that he displays is something we've probably lacked for a while. So I'm a big fan of him.
I think Cookie will love him for that exact reason.
Yes.
So as we start to wind things down, as I mentioned, I cited before, obviously, the incredible content that you're making, and I highlighted again before that even though the bulk of the overwhelming majority, I'm sure, of listeners here today will be Geelong supporters, I would really encourage them to go check out what you and the team have been doing. So if I give you a moment to plug everything, where should people go to check out all of the awesome Blue Abroad content?
Thank you. I would say, just on YouTube, type in Blue Abroad. You'll find us there. Subscribe on YouTube. I mean, there is an Instagram account, Blue Abroad Official. It's on Facebook as well, Blue Abroad, Twitter, TikTok. But, the main source of the content and the main focus is always going to be on YouTube. So, just head there and join in. We do get a lot of opposition supporters that come and just hang out. I mean, we enjoy just hanging out with footy fans on our live streams. There are certain things which can be quite fun for a non-Carlton supporter to watch. I think the fan cams is always a good one after a game, probably more so when we lose than when we win. We probably get more opposition supporters tuned into that. And then I think Pommy, who does the watch-alongs during a game, I think that's very entertaining as well. So, come in, drop a line, and have a conversation with us. And we love the fact that there are opposition supporters that come and tune in as well. I think it's a compliment to what we do.
No, absolutely. And as I've stressed a few times, it is some awesome stuff. So please make sure to go check that out. If people want to engage more specifically with you, social media handle-wise, there any places that people should go? Currently, if people are watching the video version, there's a handle right above your head. But
I mean, you can find me on Instagram, DEHGHANI, and it's TDEHGHANI. So you can just reach out to me there. I'm pretty active on there, more so on the Blue Abroad side of things, but that's where you can find me. Also, LinkedIn, I'm around. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing this love of the game, the Carlton Football Club, and a little bit of insight into your experiences with the Geelong Footy Club along the way as well. As I've said a few times, I can't wish them the absolute best next year because my mob should be there or thereabouts, and so I've got a horse in the race in that particular instance. But if it can't be Geelong, I'll be honest, I am hoping it is the Carlton Footy Club next year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and all the best for the Geelong Footy Club and for you guys as well. I really wish you all the best.
That's awesome. And of course, Cats fans, those watching and listening, if you haven't already subscribed on the YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe to The Hoop Show, the Behind the Play podcast feed as well. And until next time, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you next time.